Hello, everybody, and welcome back again to the Off Air podcast. It is again that time of the month, and for us lads, of course, that means it's time to look back over the month of November and what that has been looking like for Maidstone United. It has been a pretty up and down month, of course, some big results and some not so big results, which of course we will get into in this video. Joining me today are channel regulars Sean Skur and Nigel Seeger. Hello, lads.
Oh,
Evening.
And of course, as you would have seen in the past, hopefully, if you haven't, go back and have a little look at some of the videos we've made in the past. But hopefully, today we're going to be able to have a little general chat about the month that Maidstone have had, who are the best players, excuse that car horn outside, and we'll be looking at what we're hoping to see a little bit in the next month, of course, and to round off this year. So, we'll kick things off and take a little look back at the first home game of the month, the 1st of November, I do believe, and that was us hosting the delayed game against Solihull Moors. So I couldn't actually attend this game, I was working, so I'll leave it down to you two lads to provide a little bit more information. And Nigel, we'll go with you first. So obviously you were at the Solihull game, 0-0 draw, which at the time seemed like an incredibly good result and a very good performance from the boys. So what did you take from that game?
yeah. I mean, from Mason's point of view, I thought it was very good. I mean, that was the first of sort of like the clean sheet run that we had. I think Stanford was in for that goal, and that was one of his first games, and maybe that he was back, and we looked quite solid, really. I mean, we set up not to concede. Solihull, we've got a lot of talented players. Zabara in the middle and Dallas had playing up top, and they all come with reputation for getting goals. And in the main, we kind of kept them. I can't really think of anything. There was nothing controversial. There was no chances. It was pretty much your bog standard 0-0 draw, really. And at the time, like you say, it was a good point because we come off of the back of conceding goals at will. So in that respect, everyone was quite happy with it. And I think at the time, Solihull were up in about third or fourth in the table. I know they dropped off a little bit since then, but yeah, it was a good point. And as proven as we'll talk about, it provided that base to build upon, which is what Hack's been talking about. And he did say in his post-match interview after that Solihull game that it might not be pretty for the next few weeks. It's got to be back to basics and strip it down to the bare bones and build it back up again, which I say that was the first sort of stepping stone towards that goal.
Yeah, like you say, the Solihull game for me, at least listening in, did sound like a game where we just tried to instill the basic fundamentals in football in the team. And it really is those core kind of footballing beliefs that if you can instill in a game, you can get a result against any opposition. And that's seemingly what we did against Solihull. So, Sean, what about you? Did you have any different thoughts to Nigel on that, or anything you wanted to add?
Nothing terribly different, Joe. Obviously, it was myself and Connor you would have been listening to. That was my one stint for the month. Yeah, I mean, it was Galvin was sort of the main shining light of that match in an attacking sense. He was pushed further forward for that game and for a couple of subsequent games because, of course, the big man, Ben Williams, was back and obviously he was blowing very hard come 70 minutes. So he obviously didn't complete his first full 90 of the season, but it was his first league minutes, competitive minutes for Maidstone. Galvin probably had the best chance for us. Other than that, there wasn't too much to report other than just really grinding out a decent performance against the side higher up in the league than we are, and probably had one or two more of those throughout the rest of this month as well. So a positive start to what I believe was probably quite a positive month overall. Spoiler alert.
Yeah, well, like you say, we've had that injection of positivity, 2 draws in a row. That was, I do believe, one of the longest unbeaten runs we'd had during the season at that point. And I think a lot of people were starting to see, a few of the new additions coming in. Reece Greenwich, for example, really starting to implement himself in this team, starting to find his feet a little bit more, of course, since his debut at Notts County a couple of weeks before. And going off the back of those two games, those 2-0 draws, this is where we thought perhaps we could kick on a little bit. We may be able to create a few more chances whilst keeping that clean sheet at the back. And, we did score a couple goals in our next game, this one being Eastleigh on the road. But the clean sheet didn't quite hold itself together. We did lose that game 5-2 on the road. And Nigel, what really happened? What went wrong in that game? For those who weren't at the game, what was it that you think was a sort of tipping point, or do you think the Stones maybe should have got a little bit more out of that game? What are your thoughts on that one?
Yeah, it's a difficult one, really. I mean, they started off very dominant, Eastleigh, and we was hanging on when they got their first goal, but we had that sort of 10-15 minute spell just before half time when we got both our goals. And of course, could added to it when Fuale went through, and it was only from a fine stop by their keeper, tipped it over the bar that stopped us gaining 3-1 at half time. I did say to Darren in commentary at that game, that's the first game this season that we'd gone into half time actually leading a game. So it would have been interesting to see how we would have progressed. Hack's of the opinion since then that we would have gone on and got the 3 points at that game. But then obviously Gavin Hoyt had that red card and sending off, and it unraveled pretty quickly after that, really. Again, it was the same problems that we've had throughout the rest of the season, where a lot of the back four, they were playing kind of, were all sort of playing out of position. So, that they brought two substitutes on almost immediately after they got the 10 men, and they were both sort of like pacey forwards, and they both got an assist and a goal, and run out comfortable winners in the end. But it was definitely a case of what might have been, I think, in that game. I think, in that first half, it was definitely a stepping stone towards from what we were doing against the Solihull game, and trying to attack, but it's just getting that balance right between attacking goals and keeping yourself tight at the back as well. So, it is definitely a case of what might have been, but it just looked bad for the rest of the league. After getting a gritty performance like that against Solihull, it would just either get another draw away from home or 3 points, and we'd have probably seen that trajectory go up quicker. But just a setback at the time, and thankfully it didn't cost us too much over the month. So
Yeah, like you say, just that kind of, I think that was probably the major blip in this month. I think that's really in the league the only result which I've not been particularly pleased with. And I think, like you mentioned, there was tipping points in that game, which, the red card, penalty, that sort of thing, allowed them straight back into it, the equaliser. And from there, they just obviously saw red. And, excuse the pun, and that was their opportunity to come forward. 3 goals in about 20 minutes, and by then it was over. So Maidstone couldn't really work themselves back into that one. But like you say, the foundations were starting to show a little bit more building this time going forward, from what we'd seen in the previous 2 games. So Sean, is there anything else that you feel might have contributed to that Eastleigh kind of blip, or is kind of similar level to Nigel in your thoughts?
I mean, most people are going to point to the red card, and I don't think I'm going to change away from that myself either. Very instrumental in the result changing. The Fuole chance at 2-1 up, as you've mentioned there, Nigel, the only half-time lead we'd had all season long before yesterday, Maidenhead. More on that story later.
Spoilers.
Indeed, again. But I've always banged on about my stats, and I haven't got the exact figures to hand, because I'm sure it's somewhere between 20 and 25 matches last season where we had a half-time lead, and we never lost a single half-time lead. So the fact that we did get ourselves a half-time lead against Eastleigh, obviously you'd imagine me to be grinning like a Cheshire cat thinking, excellent, some form from last season that we've been crying out for. But unfortunately, as you quite rightly mentioned, the red card that happened just, killed the game off as a contest, and we just weren't able to be tight enough to get anything from the game, unfortunately. And it was the right result for Eastleigh, because, they probably played better throughout the game. there's an argument you'd say possibly even with 11 men, we probably wouldn't have done too well against them either. So, but yeah, the red card was definitely key in that. But again, positive moments in that match, the bricks, the building blocks that Tell and Hack have been asking for, and there were more of them at Eastleigh, but still likely that we weren't going to get all 3 points at least, even with that lead that we had.
Exactly. And it is important to remember as well that, there's going to be games in this league where sometimes we're just not going to be in it. Obviously Eastleigh had the momentum after that red card, but like you mentioned, even if we had managed to keep 11 men on the field, it still would have been difficult, of course, as many games are in this division, to come away with all 3 points, let alone a point. So, it is important to just reinforce that. Remember kind of who we are in this division, not have, the expectations set so high, of course, be disappointed. Like I said, that was probably the only disappointing result that we had in that month, but well, in the league at least. We'll get onto that spoilers a little bit more. But again, the bounce back was there. We did then go away to Scunthorpe, of course, a very, very long journey. Myself and Nigel did make the trip for that one, I do believe. And yeah, what an away day that was, going to an ex-league club, good amount of fans, lovely stadium, and we did manage to pull off a 2-0 win. Goals from Jack Barham, not Ryan Galvin, and Rory Deacon with a lovely goal as well towards the end of the second half. And again, it's just that foundation building. Doing the simple things is exactly what we did in this Scunthorpe game. There was nothing too glamorous, nothing too adventurous, but we just did exactly what we did last season during, the starting period, where we kind of looked to build that form and did the simple things right. Looked relatively solid at the back. There was a couple times they got through, but again, Ryan Sanford coming out of his goal to alleviate some of that pressure, keeping that clean sheet. And again, that was the second one in 3 games, which is not something we've seen at all this season, of course, being, I think, now the second highest goals conceded behind Dorking. I might be wrong, but I think we're second most conceded now. So seeing these clean sheets coming through, building on the couple goals we saw against Eastleigh, bagging a couple again in this game. And this time we came away with a win, the first in quite a long time. The first, I think, since, I'm just going to have to double check it. Yeah, since Aldershot. So since August, the first win, 2.5 months pretty much. And it was long overdue, but we got there in the end. So Nigel, what was it like for you, seeing that win? Obviously, it's been a long time coming, but what did you feel about that game?
Yeah, to me, it was kind of like back to basics. It was a proper Maidstone performance, what we expect from last season. Very tight at the back, first half. Obviously, they did have chances, but then you'd expect them, that being the home team with the crowd behind them. But in the main, we covered those pretty well. And then Barham, of course, come off the bench, got his goal, assisted by Rory, and then Rory added sort of like the cherry on top of the cake with a typical Rory goal, cutting in from the left, just banging it in with his right foot, and pretty comfortable, really. I mean, I know there was a bit of a spat between their manager and Hack after the game, sort of saying their manager was saying that you don't know how they didn't win that game. Well, they didn't score any goals. That's how they didn't win that game.
Yeah.
And that sometimes you have to give credit to the opposition. We've gone there with a game plan. I don't think it can be underestimated how influential Greninger's been now. He's definitely marshals that defence, and at the moment it doesn't. And George Farrell was obviously back for that game as well, and that again made the difference. So yeah, as I said, it was a proper Maidstone performance, back to what we was last year. Just keep it tight in the first half, win your battles, win your individual battles, and then come out on top at the end. And I was trying to think back after that game, whether we were last in the, obviously Wrexham, I think, but a newly relegated club, and we went there and we was dominant. we deserved the points, and it was a good feeling. I think that was the performance that sort of got the rewards for all the effort that's been for the last few games. And it just uplifts the club, uplifts the team, uplifts the players, uplifts the fans. It just gives you that feel good factor back again. And it's all right being resolute and that, but if you're not getting your rewards for it, you kind of lose that sort of momentum. So it's just a game of carrying on that momentum and again keeping that upward trajectory going.
Yeah, absolutely. Like you said there, even when you're starting to get these better performances in, 0-0 here, 0-0 there, it must be quite hard to take for players when, you're putting all this effort in and things are finally starting to go right and you still can't get a win. You still got this long period without a win, and then it finally comes, and that's where everybody starts to kind of have that pressure off their back a little bit. They can kind of go, right, well, we've got a win now. There's not so much pressure on us to just win the next game or the next game, because no one's expecting Maidstone to do that. Within the fans or within the staff, no one's expecting us to go on this big winning streak. So, getting one win away at Scunthorpe, like you mentioned, big ex-league club, that was a good result for the boys. And Sean, I don't believe you could make that game, but obviously you're aware of the situation, you're aware of the win. What do you think that means for Maidstone for the rest of the month? What do you think that did to kind of set us up going forward?
It gives Maidstone, gives all of us, the squad, everybody inside and outside of the inner sanctum, just gives us a bit of belief to know that the building blocks that keep being put in place, as you quite rightly say, it's all well and good to draw 0-0 every other week, but it's then getting an end product, having an opportunity to take a chance. And again, something similar to last season, I can tell pretty much 98% of the substitutions they made last season bore fruit when things were needed. And for Wole, all for his good running, like at Eastleigh, for example, the finish wasn't necessarily there for those games. Barham's come on and scored within about 10 minutes of replacing him, 5-10 minutes of replacing for Wole. And that's, that's what these guys are paid to do, these changes. And that's pretty much won us the game. And as you say, Nigel Deacon's put the cherry on top of the cake. And it was just such a long run. I mean, last season's was probably only about 7 or 8 games. And this season's run, we've been putting the notes and the stats together, and it being, sort of 13, 14 games, league, all competitions, etc. It was just excruciating, to be honest. And again, everybody needs that positivity. It needs to start from somewhere. And even though Scunthorpe are not what they used to be, they're not what they say they are on the tin, being this massive club that used to have Kevin Keegan there and Ian Botham playing part-time and whatever else. They're not a shadow of what they used to be. The ground to us, for example, looks quite different, quite something, but I know it's one of the more recent all-seater ones that got built, and they're already talking about tearing it down again because it's just absolutely decrepit and falling apart. When you really get to look into those bits, I'm sure you'd experienced it yourself being on the comms for us there, Joe, that it's nice enough and better than other facilities that we've been offered that we'll talk about or not later on. But yeah, it's a marquee win because it's a name. It's not anything substantive because of the trials and tribulations they've had these last few years. They've just sunk like a stone. There's been so many others like York, Stockport that are slowly rising and bubbling up, but they really are just on a hiding to nothing at the moment. Scunthorpe, everything they do at present is just downward. And again, I'm always very cliched. I always say you got to beat the teams around you and below you, and that it's literally bread and butter. You've got to do that, and we've had an okay record against most of them, as we've discussed in a few of these videos before, and as the rest of this month proved, we've had a decent enough record to keep ourselves where we need to be realistically in 4 or 5 months' time. So great result, great performance, and a proper tonic for everyone associated with the club at last.
I don't think the importance of a win at that stage can be understated. You mentioned obviously getting the results against the teams in and around us and how important that is. And of course, a result against Scunthorpe, as you say, really not doing too fantastic at the moment. I think they're joint bottom of the National League currently. Of course, this was a couple of games ago. But at the time, we were competing to try and get out of the relegation spot with them. I think that game did just take us out by a point. And, I think after seeing a win, after seeing the position in the table of, okay, now we're out. This is, we're not getting dragged further down. This is our opportunity to try and keep our heads above water and see what we can do from here. And we had another opportunity coming up in which I at least felt that we could actually string a couple wins together. And of course, that was other relegation candidate currently being Oldham Athletic at home. And this game for me was your stereotypical snooze fest, too scared to lose, I think, from both teams. Oldham most certainly had the better of the game, really. But again, that's not saying too much. We saw Ryan Sanford probably get a very well-deserved man of the match, in my opinion. Kept us in that game in a couple key, crucial moments. But apart from that, really not all too much to write home about. And again, that's the kind of game which I think we all as fans would like to win. But I don't think we can be too disappointed considering how we performed on the day and still come away with a 0-0 and a clean sheet. I don't think it's all that bad. I was a little disappointed we couldn't string a goal together, but let's not start running before we can even walk. We just got a first win in a long time, just not losing the next one. Getting this little unbeaten sort of streak in the league is what we needed to do, and we did manage to do it. We did keep that clean sheet, and again, like you say, building that foundation, starting to just string a few results together is what we needed to do. And Nigel, when it comes to this Oldham game, I can imagine yourself are probably a little bit disappointed with the performance, maybe not so much the result, but tell us how you thought about that, or what you thought about that one.
Yeah, like you say, it was two teams that were scared to lose. I think personally, over the course of the season, we're going to look back on that game and kind of, I think, of the teams that are in the current bottom four, Oldham are more likely to get out of it. They've got the bigger crowd, they've had their takeover, they've got a little bit of money behind them. I think they're going to be well backed. So I think, I say looking back in retrospect, it's going to be a good point. But it was very hard to commentate on because it was very lacking in quality. It was just two teams that were, going through the process, trying to keep it tight, but just that final ball that, and I said on commentary as well, Sanford, very good saves. His positioning was very good, but I don't think they had the quality up top to trouble him. I mean, all of the shots that Abraham's had were right at Sanford. He didn't really have to do anything, whether that's to do with Sanford's positioning or the poor quality of Abraham's. He obviously doesn't possess his brother's genes, but they have signed players since then, and they've got Alex Reid in there from Solihull, to put the gold in. So I think it's a good point, and it's like Sean alluded to just now. All throughout last season, Hack was very much trust the process. It is a process. You can see what he's trying to do. He's kind of got Greenwich in, he's got Sanford in. They're players that have improved the team. He's not going to go away. We've all got our opinions about he should play this player, he should play that player, he should play three at the back and play with wing. He's not going to do it. He's very much, and he said towards the back end of last season, he's not going to change away from the system that's got him the success. So whether that means changing players around within that system, he will do that. If he thinks that's in the best interest of the team, it's not about the individual, it's about the team, and it's that hard work and that mentality of not being beaten and not giving away stupid, silly goals. And if you can get into that habit, and it's like that. All the commentators always say, if you can pick up a point when you're not playing well, that's a positive you take from it, isn't it? And it's just keeping that unbeaten record going, and just again another brick in that wall to building up them stepping stones. So, I say you've got to, sometimes in the moment you've got to look back after the game and over the course of the season. I mean, we said it last season, didn't we? You myself and you commentated on that having a Waterlooville game away. It was the most drab, dire game. But you look back, that was the point where we turned them to run of defeats into that. It was only a point away from home against a title rival or a playoff rival. But when you look back, that was the turning point. That was where you started implementing the Maidstone way, as you say. So that's taking the positives from it. But it was a dire game to watch. But looking back now after Saturday's performance, it's all good.
Absolutely. And Sean, I think he might have been in America for this game. I'm not entirely sure. Do enlighten us. So, you obviously would have had your thoughts and opinions on this one. You would have obviously reviewed the highlights. And looking at the grand scheme of things, as we just mentioned, a relegation rival as such are Oldham. Obviously, a few games in hand at the moment, which puts them in a bit more of an advantageous position compared to other relegation candidates, like Nigel said. But when it comes to the game itself, were your expectations met? Were you sharing a similar sentiment to me and kind of just, we've come off the back of this win, let's just get a result? Or were you, quite expecting something a little bit more?
I wouldn't say I'd be disappointed in any sense. I'd certainly say that with, the points tallies that I've sort of put out there throughout the season, and like Hack spoke about yesterday after the Maidenhead result, 4 points from every 9, a win, loss and a draw. Roughly that's what this month has achieved, and that's probably, we'll run through it near the end of the video, but certainly August was good. The last 2 months were dreadful. November was about as good as it could be relative to August. So yeah, I wasn't disappointed. I would have liked a little bit more attacking intent from Maidstone. I did say that David Unsworth would tighten up Oldham when he got in. He's been there a little while now. Not much has changed, be their goal difference, their defence, their league position. The one thing I will pull you up on, Joe, as a Newcastle fan, knowing what relegation fights are like, I would always take points on the board rather than games in hand. Because if you're in a rubbish run of form, like Oldham are, and you've got another 3 games to play, you're not very likely to get 4 or 5 points out of those 9 points available. You're likely to lose 2 or 3 of them and concede goals in them and make your goal difference even worse. So when you've not got the positivity and you are down there, you want to play as little as possible. Sometimes it's only when you get those changes in momentum and form like Maidstone have had, it's a case of, we've got to wait till Saturday for Woking now. I want to play again Tuesday. I want to go again. And you could see that in the squad for the last couple of weeks in the league games, where the positivity of last season again has been there, where they've just been a bit more lively, a bit more wanting to go out there and play, because those last couple of months the shoulders have been slumped. They've not been as happy with things for whatever reason. The main reason, clearly, just not getting points, not playing as well as they know they can. So disappointing result. The performance probably more disappointing, because the point we got was actually quite a decent one in the end. As Nigel says, longer term, that's probably going to be quite a potentially helpful one when we play them in the reverse next year.
Exactly. And it is, again, just important to stress kind of who we are in this league. We don't want to get the expectations so high. This is, another ex-league club, someone or a team, who are going through this transitional period. They're going to be under a lot of pressure at the moment to try and perform every single week, and they will not be happy that they got a 0-0, I feel. But I suppose, considering the circumstances and the situation that both teams find themselves in, I think that Maidstone could probably walk away happiest with a point in that game. And I think that, again, that just cements this idea that Maidstone are sort of now in this sort of turning point in the season where results are picking up a little bit. We've had 8 points from 15 in this month of November, which I do believe is our highest point scoring month so far of the season. And you just have to kind of look at it and go, well, in the grand scheme of things, this is a lot better than what we thought we'd be doing, I think. We have got more than half of the points available. And I remember, of course, at the start of the season, Sean, we both said, yourself more so, about the kind of 4 points from every 9 available is what's going to keep your head above water. And Maidstone have exceeded that this month. So that is always a good sign. Now, of course, after the Oldham game, everybody thought, here we go, let's get a cup run, an easy win to just kind of boom, 4 or 5-0, go into this Maidenhead game off the back of a fantastic result, build on this unbeaten run that we're on, and then we went to Corinthian with their bus stops as dugouts, and well, that went well, didn't it, boys? So okay, Maidenhead in the league at the Gallagher Stadium. We did end up winning that game 3-2. Of course, probably our biggest result of the season in terms of results and opposition's performance. I think this was the game where, for me at least, commentating yesterday with Fred Atkins, everything just seemed to sort of click together. Of course, we did concede 2 goals, one very sloppily at the end. We did switch off a little bit. I think, 95th minute, the game was already gone, but we did just slip a tad. And then, of course, that free kick, which was fantastic in its own right, but when conceding from open play, we did manage to keep the ball out for 94 minutes, and that was a very good sign for me. Attacking wise, I think we saw a lot of Maidstone from last season. I think the passages of play, the way we created some of the goals was absolutely fantastic. We saw finally this kind of triangle system of passing that we've been dying and crying out for all season. We saw flashes of it throughout games, but this for me was the game where, for large periods of this game, we really, really did play professionally. Fred was talking about on the commentary how, the last 25, 30 minutes before we got the third goal, we did just control that game. We really did dictate it. A lot of possession in the middle of the field and just outside their box, and, creating opportunities, managing to facilitate these attacking players that we have got and get the most out of them. And, we saw Christy Patterson score, Rory Deacon score, and of course, Dom Odesanya, who for me had a fantastic game, has been really good actually these last few weeks. So big credit to Dom stepping up, considering I think at the start of the season, a lot of fans probably would have said that it would have been his spot in that midfield 3 that was up for contention with the signing of Henry Woods and a couple of other players. So it's really nice to see him settling into this side. And again, these new signings kicking on. I think Fred said yesterday that despite the attacking proficiency of Maidstone yesterday, he probably would have given Ryan Sanford man of the match, because some of the saves he made were just fantastic, in important times of the game as well, which stopped them from getting back into it. And, it's really nice to see everybody on the team having a decent performance and us actually having to debate who gets man of the match because we had so many good performances. So, Nigel, when it comes to this game, what did it mean for you in terms of, we're beating a team that's in that mid-table position, looking pretty good, on a decent run of form, and we did manage to step it up and look the better team for the majority of the game?
Yeah, again, like I said, with I've been saying all season, it's that sort of, or for this podcast, it's the Maidstone way, isn't it? Yeah, it's getting back to that sort of. I think this was, you've alluded to it before in previous podcasts, Joseph, that we haven't won a midfield battle. I think yesterday we actually won a midfield battle.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it showed. I mean, like you said, Dom's come in and he's kind of cemented his place in that team now. And I don't think he really did that throughout all last season. Obviously, he had Mickey Phillips in there as well, and he was in and out of the side, and he didn't let us down at that point. But I think now, he's the third member of that trio in midfield, and I think he's cementing his place. And also, what I was impressed with yesterday was George Fowler.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely.
He played at right back at the beginning of the season when we were putting Gavin over to the left when we had our left back issues. I wasn't convinced. I thought he was kind of especially that Gateshead game that we've talked about before, he was still sort of going across into his position and he was kind of leaving that right side very exposed. But I suppose now because we've got Greenwich in there and he's such a dominant player in that middle of that defence, it's going to be that centre of defence is Greenwich and another, whether it be a Law, whether it be Mensah, whether it be Lyons Foster, he's the dominant one in there. So George is much, he shores up that right side. And yesterday, he was getting forward as well. And, I know you mentioned it on the commentary and it come out on the highlights that, dancing feet, he was beating players just like Jerome was on the other side and, getting crosses into the box. And he even had a shot himself over on that right hand side, So he was the one player yesterday that I was impressed with as well, And going forward, I think, especially with Gavin's injury that he got at that Corinthian game, he's going to be a big player now. I think he's going to, probably stop us going into that loan market and getting a right-sided player. I think he can fill that gap.
Yeah, I think so too. I mean, I'm pretty sure the KM did pick George Fowler as their man of the match, and I think he had a fantastic game as well. And like I said, when I was talking about it, how there were so many players that did perform so well in that game yesterday, and just being able to see out games, have these performances where, these players who maybe haven't been at their best so far this season were really starting to step it up and cement their place in this team and perform very, very well. And, for me, Odesanya, that article came out in the week where he talked about sometimes being a little bit overwhelmed by the situation he found himself in the National League. It's obviously a very big step up from someone or for someone who clearly didn't feature as much last season as he maybe would have hoped to in that starting lineup. But, seeing how this National League experience has impacted him, he's quite obviously matured quite a lot. He's putting in performances now where he is starting to cement that place and looking like the player that many of us thought he could have been. And the same goes for George Fowler, obviously finding himself in a slightly unfamiliar position in that right back role. But yesterday looked fantastic, which is always a good thing, of course. And Sean, you did come back jetting in from your holidays over to America, and this was your first game back. So what a warm welcome home.
It was, yeah, the Battle of the Maids. Very, very warm welcome. Well, warm in the sense of the pitch, not the weather, obviously, what I've been used to the last couple of weeks. But yeah, there's loads to take out from a win, the positivity, enjoying yourself and Fred's repertoire with one another, the dancing that Nigel has already mentioned. It's the early goals for me. Because this season we've been nowhere near that level of last season because hardly any goals have been scored first 15, 30 minutes by us. It's been really, really lacking in that department. So to get those first two goals in the first 20 minutes just completely tore Maidenhead asunder. Nigel earlier today has mentioned that it was the second lead that we'd had at half time because obviously the first one was Eastleigh and that didn't go so well. So the fact that we've got a first win from a half-time lead now, again, more of the positive building blocks that we had from last season that we can use. Again, echo the sentiments, best overall midfield performance this season. Two of them scored from that midfield, another cherry on top of another good cake for the collective. One other thing to mention, Maidenhead with their league position of 12, they're not a spectacular side in what they do. They're very hard working, but the league position clearly shows that they are getting results despite not having the best of performances. So I'll echo Fred's sentiments as well and say that clearly Sanford is probably a good nominee, top 2 or 3 for man of the match yesterday because there's probably a good 3 or 4 saves that he made, really class saves that he made that kept Maidenhead out. The free kick that he conceded, no keeper at many levels is going to save
That's
that.
One that you dream of scoring those, don't you?
Exactly. You score them in the park and no one sees you, but to do it at that level is, it's a fantastic goal from the lad. And then, just everybody switched off right at the end, and that's something It's cost us, as Hack said post-match, Wilston at home, that cost us 2 points. The fact that we had a 2-goal lead, I was sat there with Connor yesterday in the Manchester facility stand and saying we need a 2-goal lead because we're always vulnerable to these sorts of moments. And obviously 95th minute ticks in and that happens and you're going, I told you that's why we needed the second, the second one to be ahead by. So it really did tell its own story of our season. It's been vastly entertaining, sometimes for very wrong reasons, but a very good win and a very good overall performance. I did hear someone on the way out saying, that there's not a bad performance from any Maidstone fan, for any Maidstone player. In the fans' eyes, all 13 that played did their jobs. A Dark Quad, he only had 5 minutes to be fair, but even the 5 minutes he had in stoppage time when he come on, nice and tall, good build, a lot of pace. It was a good couple of runs that he made. So some bright sparks to add to the 30 or so minutes that he had at Corinthian in the week. So
sorry, where?
Yeah. Oh, okay. the bus stops. Yes, yeah. I can read you the entire report from the from that Corinthian result if you want. I think it read.
There wasn't a Corinthian result. The game didn't happen, so
it literally reads: "A Stones 11 bows out of the Kent Senior Cup." I think is the extent of the match report from the Maidstone United website. So,
not to be blamed.
Ourselves on Stones Live weren't able to cover it for a multitude of reasons. The main one being the facility's not brilliant, and we're not too far up ourselves in terms of being prima donnas, but certainly the lack thereof was certainly reflected by a lack of highlights, a lack of post-match, a lack of report from anyone. So you don't feel so bad. But yeah, it was the flip side of that from Tuesday to then put in a performance like that with, bear in mind, probably at least a third of that starting lineup was from Tuesday was playing, so it's not like we can be Manchester City and have 2 whole world-class 11s. It's a case of, everybody's going to be mucking in game after game. So, but yeah, get a result against the side in mid-table because of how far into the season we are now. Obviously, the other 3 wins we'd had before this month, I'd probably say that, I'd agree with you, Joe. You mentioned it's probably the best win we've had this season just for so many reasons. And it was, good timing with who and what we have coming up for the festive period.
Yeah, well, going into December, of course, we won't get there just yet, but, it is going to be a very congested month. I'm going to quickly highlight my mathematical prowess not being quite up to scratch. I've been informed of by some external forces from above that we got more points in August than we did in November, so rectify that little mishap there. Of course, maths has not always been my best point, and we'll just quickly breeze past that and swiftly into a player of the month. So this is something we typically do. Last month was, of course, a little more difficult to do in terms of the player of the month, but I think we've got a good couple of strong candidates for this month of November, and I think I'll kick things off. And personally for me, I am gonna, it's a very, very close call for me between Reece Greenwich and Ryan Sanford. Both have been excellent, I think, since they've come in. Both have shown very, very key attributes which have helped us to keep the clean sheets that we have kept and stop the goals from going in. But for me, I am just going to go for Reece Greenwich just because I feel that his presence at the back elevates everybody around him. And, I think for the first time this season, I feel very comfortable. Every time I see someone running towards him, I think, okay, he's got this one. He's going to wrap this up, get rid of that ball. And he doesn't just defend as well. He's got that ability to kind of look up, drive forward with the ball. We saw it yesterday against Maidenhead a few times. He did drive into that kind of middle third of the pitch, or even a little bit further up the pitch as well. And just for me, having that player at the back who I'm now very, very confident in is something which has just tipped him over the edge for me, but Sanford an incredibly close second. So Nigel, what about yourself? Who's your player of the month for November?
Well, like I've been impressed with Greenwich. I think he made his debut, didn't he, at Notts County at the back end of last month. But even then, on commentary, that's first half especially, we said he made a difference. He was taking throw-ins at Notts County, and just his way that he gets forward, and even when he's tracking back, his pace. But he where he's so tall, I think he, he only takes 2 or 3 paces, and he's to the ball. It was evident yesterday. When he was running back, he started off behind the player, but where he's got such a long stride, he soon catches up, and players just can't get around him. If he gets himself between the ball and the oncoming attacker, it's very difficult for him to get around him. So, but like you say as well, Hack did harp on about it at the beginning of the season. It's about building partnerships, and partnerships is key. And I think that partnership between Greenwich and Sanford, you need that good understanding with your goalie and your centre back. It's like the spine of the team. Really, it goes right through it breeds confidence to the attacking player. So, and we've said it as well. Not just yesterday, but throughout the month, Sanford's made some big saves at key times. And so I would, it's a close call, like you've said as well. But as you've gone for Greenwich, I'll go for Sanford. So there you go.
Always loving to switch it up on Stones Live, and of course on the JPonComms YouTube channel. So Sean, the third and final member, who is going to be putting forward his player of the month. Are you going to side with me? Are you going to side with Nigel? Are you going to throw someone else in the mix just to entertain the listeners?
Well, I feel like Shirley Ballas here. It's not that I'm head judge, but I'm the one left to the end, sort of mop up and decide. For me, it is Fleur and Vito should go. I'm sorry. It's yeah. For the player of the month this month, I hear both of your arguments for both of your players. I mean, the Sanford one, no doubt, his saves has been a real reason for the clean sheets and the uptake in confidence in the back line. Greenwich also equally, in my mind, is someone who is part of that confidence growing at the back. He's been fair this month. Even in that match yesterday, we of course have to mention that Joe Frualall came off after 10, 11 minutes yesterday, and Cody Lyons-Foster, who's hardly had any football at all. Similar situation to last season when obviously George Elokobi got injured. Elo come back from injury, got thrown into the lineup and just absolutely stormed it for the next 6 months. And George didn't get a chance to have a look in, frankly, to get back into that lineup. So it's George Fowler and Elo for all that time. Is it a similar situation this time round where Cody finally finds the partner that he needs to accentuate his abilities via Greenwich? So having mentioned those two that you both have and add a little bit more to it, one player I have to mention who's been back most of the month is Jerome Bingham-Williams, because we really have missed him as a character on the pitch. We were fortunate with George Elokobi last season, and to a certain extent a little bit this season. His just sheer presence on and off the pitch would always motivate, and we weren't worse off without him on the pitch. I would make an argument that we are worse off without Jerome Bingham-Williams off, without having him on the pitch. He can certainly be as good a character as George, but I don't think it's as big a character because of the experience levels between those two players. There's nothing negative against Jerome. He's one of my absolute top favourite players that we have, absolute beast. And, we almost got a liquid football moment again yesterday with Jerome right at the end, didn't we? It was very close to getting that fourth one, which again would have made things a lot smoother and less painful and quiet at the end of the match. Christie's another one I got a mention as well. Statistically, he's always getting at least a goal and an assist each month. Great to see him score again yesterday. obviously, big love from all of us, from Stones Live and JPonComms, what Hack mentioned yesterday, because we saw him up in the gantry yesterday, Joe, didn't we? Getting a
Yeah, the
massive
hug and
Hack
stuff.
hand.
Yeah,
And we
yeah.
did
You
wonder
knew
what that was
something
about.
was. Yeah,
Exactly. So for Hack and to mention that in the post match, obviously, to get that performance and another decent 90 minutes out of him to put him up against the big lad at left back, that it really worked out really well for him. And obviously a lot of emotion in the dressing room afterwards, completely understandable, because people who've gone and past, you want to do right by them in what you do in your day-to-day life, and that's what Christie has done. So big respect to him, and have to mention that, of course. So I've mentioned a couple of others that you haven't, both been great. I will pick my player of the month and not leave you in suspenders anymore. It has to be Sanford for me, purely because, as I said to you again yesterday, Joe, I did pick Tom Hadler to be player of the season at the start of the season.
yeah.
But what I meant by de facto, and I'm not copping out here, is whoever our number one is,
Regular
whoever our
goalkeeper. Yeah,
goalkeeper is going to be player of the season, purely
yeah.
because we're a bottom 6-8 side. We're going to get absolutely pounded by shots. We have indeed got the second worst defence behind Dorking. To bring that back to your earlier comment, they've conceded one more than we have,
Get
although they
in.
managed a clean sheet win yesterday. So well done to them. But yeah, very much a Morgan-esque figure. We had glimpses of Sanford. We've obviously seen the social media from last season, this season with him, once he'd finally come back from his injury, the bizarre one he got when he was with us. So to have him back and to have him longer term, I think is a great move. And a run of games that he has been in, he has shown just how good of a keeper he is. And yes, he and Greenwich both complement one another and make each other better. But I think for my money and biased towards my pick at the start of the season, Sanford.
All very fair, I do feel. So it's nice again just to see how now we're kind of debating over who gets player of the month. That is fantastic for me. Like we
Right, isn't it?
actually, we've got multiple candidates, and that's not something we've really had too often throughout the season. I love the Jerome Biddle Williams shout as well. Just a fantastic player, and what he does for the fans as well in the ground. All he has to do is one ball roll, and the fans are chanting for the next 10 minutes. That's it. Like they're gone. They're up. They're going.
Purring.
And
Purring.
yeah, how much that's contributed to our success so far this month, obviously is immeasurable, but I'd like to think is quite obvious in the effect it does have on the team and the fan base, and of course just having a bit of familiarity, of course, is always going to help out as well. So, props to everybody that we've mentioned. Again, the Christie thing as well. To go and play a game like that after having news like that, it's always very hard, but a fantastic performance nonetheless from himself. And going into the end of the video now, we're just going to quickly say, where we kind of want to be come the end of the year, just a couple minutes. And I think, looking at where we are now, I think we have got that opportunity to build a little bit more. There is going to be a few difficult games. I'll quickly just read through them for the month of December. Of course, we are kicking things off on the road against Woking next week. That is going to be commentated by Nigel and Darren Stiles, so do tune in for that. It's an early kickoff, 3rd of December, 12:30. So if you can't make it, do tune in to Stones Live. We'll then have Altrincham at home on Saturday the 10th, Dorking away on the 13th of December. The FA Trophy third round against Worthing 17th of December, 3 o'clock. And then away on Boxing Day, Dagenham and Redbridge, 3 o'clock. And that will wrap up December. So, of course, boys, we have got a few potentially winnable results in there. I think, it'd be quite interesting to see what we can do against the likes of Altrincham and Dagenham, who are performing a little bit better than when we first came across them in the season. Well, Altrincham are performing a little bit better than when we first came across them in the season. Obviously have not played Dagenham just yet, but they're doing pretty well in ninth with a game in hand. So where do you think will be come the end of this calendar year, Nigel?
I don't know. Obviously, like you said, we haven't played Dagenham yet, and they are our back-to-back games over the Christmas and New Year period. But I was looking at the table after the game yesterday, and the Altrincham game, when we play them at home, after that game, that will be 23 games. So that's bang halfway through the season. And other than Dagenham, we've played every team at least once. And we're kind of around where we said we want to be, aren't we? It's like the old song, isn't it? How we get there, I don't know. How we get there, I don't care. But if we're only 4 points away from getting 25 points at the halfway stage, which is halfway to 50 target, isn't it? So like I said earlier, you just got to trust the process. You don't never too high, never too low. It's all the old adages come in. It's a marathon, not a sprint. It's you can see where we're going, and you just picking up points. And Hack said it, and you, BBC Radio Kent interview after the Oldham game. Now that we're outside that bottom four, it's imperative that we stay outside of it. If we finish where we are now at the end of the season, it's going to be a successful season. I would hope that we'll have a little bit of a run on in the FA Trophy. It's a difficult draw against Worthing, who are, near the top of the league below, so it's not going to be an easy game. They've got that upward trajectory after getting promoted last year, so they're going to fancy their chances. But it's like anything, isn't it? You might say it's only the trophy, but if you can just get a couple of wins in that, it just keeps that sequence going. And if we finish at the end of the season in the position we are now and getting a trip to Wembley, it's going to be great, isn't it? The fan base is going to be very positive. Look what it's done for Bromley. They last year, they got a couple of decent draws and found themselves in the latter stages of the FA Trophy, and then went to Wembley and won it. And they've got that memory for life. You can't take that away from them. Whatever happens throughout the rest of the rest of the seasons, you've got that memory. It's about building that. So, I hope that we would take that game seriously. I'm sure we will, and get through to the next round there, and keep the winning run going.
Let's hope so, Sean? Where do you think, or what would you like to see us do in December?
Well, yeah, let's hope so indeed. Because FA Trophy win. You got to bear in mind as well, Nigel. Of course, Bromley 12 months prior to that win, they obviously completely flunked the final as well. So it was good in its own right for them to win it. But when you couple up with them losing it 12 months before, when they really should have won it then as well, and especially the opposition that they had this time round, really does show. It helps grow the club, and everything they've done there the last few years is certainly what Maidstone would have liked to have continued doing without 3 years in the south. It is going to be a harder month. Woking away, they're up in fourth. They're one of Nigel's early tips, and quite rightly so, because they're only like 8 points off of second, 3 off of Chesterfield in third. Woking, any point at all from Woking, I think would be, give Hack a knighthood, frankly, if we get something from that game. As good as our run has been recently, Woking just superb home form, and they've built on that. Altrincham at home for me. I was, we were all up there for the first game of the season, and 45 minutes in, it was HMS pissed the league again, wasn't it? That'd be fine. But they're a little further ahead of us. I would hope that with home advantage and the momentum that we've got currently, that a home win wouldn't be too hard to get. They've certainly become a lot more difficult to beat, as you mentioned there. Dorking away, that's just a bag of headless chickens and cats thrown up in the air, frankly, isn't it? You've got no bloody idea what happens when these two teams play. It's just, I genuinely can't wait to go there and commentate on that one. Last season's one was a bit disappointing for us all when we were there, but certainly the way the home game went this season, anything could have happened. It could have been 7-6 to us rather than 4-2 to them, frankly. So I'd expect us to get something from there. I just don't know what the something is. I don't see us losing that one. They did put in a good performance against York yesterday. Very efficient performance again there from Dorking. The Worthing FA Trophy game, as we've alluded to there, Nigel, you mentioned, the FA Cup is for the money. The FA Trophy is for a shot at Wembley. Those are literally the only two reasons those things exist for a side like Maidstone at our level. Dagenham and Redbridge on Boxing Day, the only team obviously we've not played yet this season other than Woking at this stage. We get them twice in a week. Yeah, it's a similar sort of game to Maidenhead, I'd say, because there's only a couple of points between them two. They obviously got their draw against the Gills yesterday, which is probably a disappointing result, drawing at home to Gillingham. Because generally we win those when we play them. It's probably a good moment to throw in the fact that depending on our form and Gillingham's form, this could actually be a league fixture next year, Maidstone Gillingham.
Let's hope so.
And a few people have laughed at that over the years, Gillingham fans that I know. And yes, we need to get our ship in order and keep it upright and to keep it in the National League. But yeah, there is a high chance that Gillingham could get relegated to the National League for next season. And we'd all be queuing up to have a chat about that one and watch that one. But we'll concentrate on their cup opponents, Dagenham and Redbridge, who, are Dorking-esque in a sense, because you really don't know what you get with them a lot of the time either. So, it certainly won't be an unbeaten month. If we are going to lose it anywhere, it's going to be Woking. But if we could get an unbeaten run after Woking again for the rest of the month, that would buoy us into the early games in the new year, having to play Dagenham again for that second time in a week. 4 points off of Dagenham potentially would leave us potentially about 4 points off of Dagenham in the league as well, because I think we're only about 9 points off the playoffs now. So let's
9 points.
Let's not get carried away. But
4 off relegation, 9 off playoffs.
Exactly, so it works both ways. Still
we're
at
almost
this
there.
stage, but again, it's Nigel was saying, it's halfway through the season in like weeks, in a fortnight's time. It's mad where this time has gone. It just rattles along at such a pace, and we'll try and keep you up to date with it all as best we can here, guys?
Indeed, yeah, whether that be through the channel or on air. As I said, we are going to be live at the weekend against Woking. Nigel will be commentating that one with Darren Stiles. And of course, that's going to be a big game where, Maidstone are going to be hoping to build on a second win in 3 league games. So, big opportunity here to go forward.
You know what
and
I'm
get
hoping
something.
for on that one, Joe, just to interrupt you, is goals. I mean,
Yeah.
we always my games get a 0-0 Borefest now, which would be a good result for Maidstone. But we've always had goals. I mean, we had the 4-4 draw a few years ago, didn't we? And we, even at the home games, we seem to always have goals in the game. So fingers crossed.
Yeah, indeed. It would be absolutely lovely to see a goal fest. Hopefully, for our sakes, Maidstone can come out on the better end of it. Results-wise, of course, a point there would not to be sniffed at all. So let's see what Maidstone can do. And I think that is going to about wrap it up from the 3 of us. So I just want to say thank you, of course, Sean, for joining me. And yourself, Nigel, as well.
Thank you very much.
And that is going to be all from us here on the JPonComms YouTube channel on the Off Air podcast. So we'll see you again in about a month's time, maybe a little bit of a New Year's special, Christmas, that kind of lull period in between. I'm sure we won't be too drunk and disorderly when we next meet. Maybe Sean and Nigel will, but I'll try my best to keep calm as a host and see what we can do in a month's time. So catch you later, everybody. Thank you all for watching. We'll see you later.